It's too late. They've given up on the country and essentially have a financial coup d'etat, which is exactly what I think has happened.
They knew that the system and the grammar had ended. They knew the flag authorizations and the credentialing for controlling contract and setting venue in courts and banks had ended, and ports had ended in 1999.
What I later came to realize was what he was talking about was they were implementing a financial coup. They had given up on a system where the bankers control monetary policy and the people's representatives control fiscal policy, and decided to move to a process where essentially the bankers controlled both fiscal and monetary policy. And they were not going to do it by, presenting new legislation to change things. They were going to do it on the just do it method and lever up the debt, issue tons of debt, and suck all the money out the back door. And I showed them what was possible if we re-engineered the government money, and there was enormous opportunity to build, enormous financial equity capital gains. The pension funds could make a lot of money, sort of re-engineering how the federal budget worked in a way that would create a much more productive economy. And the president of the largest pension fund in the country was there, and he looked at me and he said, "You don't understand. This is what we had tried to do." He had been working with a group of activists as a young man. He said, "This is what we tried to do, and they were able to stop us." And I said very naively, "Well, you didn't have the internet. You couldn't get the learning speeds up locally high enough to sort of jump the curve." And then he froze and he looked at me and he said, "You don't understand. It's too late." I said, "What do you mean it's too late?" He said, "It's too late. They've given up on the country. They're going to move all the money out of the country starting in the fall." He said, "You've got to get to Nick Brady." Brady had been the chairman of the firm that I was a partner at Wall Street, and then had become Secretary of the Treasury in the first Bush administration, and was one of the people you would loosely say was a leader in how the financial system got run. So you said, "You got to get to Nick." So, but I thought what he meant, Andy, was that we have been given a directive to reallocate the equity in the pension funds to emerging market investments, which made sense because you had much higher growth rates in Asia and the emerging markets than you did in the more mature economies. That's what I thought he meant. But then what happened at the beginning, he said they're moving all the money out starting in the fall. That fall was the beginning of fiscal 1998, when enormous amounts of money started to go missing from my old agency, HUD, as well as the Department of Defense. And what I later came to believe, we have an entire website just dedicated to presenting all the documents and analysis on this. It's at missingmoney.solari.com. But what I later came to realize was what he was talking about was they were implementing a financial coup. They had given up on a system where the bankers control monetary policy and the people's representatives control fiscal policy, and decided to move to a process where essentially the bankers controlled both fiscal and monetary policy. And they were not going to do it by, presenting new legislation to change things. They were going to do it on the just do it method and lever up the debt, issue tons of debt, and suck all the money out the back door, and essentially have a financial coup d'etat, which is exactly what I think has happened.
In 1999, David Winkle Miller and myself filed in on the Title IV 1-to-1.9 dimension flag with what we called a live-life birth-claim. And this was what we called claim of the life. And we filed for the flag description of the Title IV Section 1, 2, and 3 1-to-1.9 dimension flag. We filed it at the United Nations as well as the U.S. Pentagon and the U.S. Post Office as the United States was coming out of international bankruptcy. And they knew the flag authorizations and the credentialing for controlling contract and setting venue in courts and banks had ended, and ports had ended in 1999. However, they used the grammar to then turn around to the broader perspective of planet Earth, knowing that they were no longer accountable for anything that they did because the grammar was fraudulently conveyed, and they used what was set up for the people to then destroy the people. They knew
so there are two issues you want to keep in mind when you look at what's going on. One is the programmable money, and one is the whether or not interest can be paid, and who's going to be dominant in this market. Is it going to be the banks? Now, if interest can't be paid, my prediction is it's the New York Fed and the big Fed banks who are going to dominate this market, including globally. But if the fintechs can offer rewards and interest, they can outcompete. The fintechs can offer rewards and but if the fintechs can offer rewards and interest, they can outcompete, and the giant sucking sound will happen. So the issue is, will the banks win and do a giant sucking sound on everybody else's banking system, or will fintech win? Will fintech win and do a giant sucking sound on the banks?
You look at all theater for syntax, the style of writing for grammar on planet Earth. There's not one legal sentence. There's not one legal fact to establish conditions of state of war, hatred, division amongst people globally, galactically. And when you look at the concepts of the quantum grammar system, we actually put a solution on the table to challenge the concept of thinking.
Now, understand the Clarity Act also addresses asset tokens, okay? And asset tokens, Larry Fink has said publicly, and Paul Atkins, the chairman of SEC, has said all securities will be traded using asset tokens, okay? Which means no privacy on all your asset token or all your securities trades. But Atkins the other day said in an interview that this was all going to happen within 2 years, which frankly in my mind is mind-boggling. One of the things that's never been made clear, not SEC, not BlackRock, anybody, is exactly how you're going to associate an existing stock or bond with securities. Now, crypto, as you know, Andy, is only about $4 trillion. But when you talk about the securities market, you're talking about, $250 trillion globally. And the idea of getting all these on blockchains, all I can say is I don't think there's enough geothermal energy on the planet to do this. So you have a group of people who are talking their book and talking about wildly fantastic things. You would need to bring out and make legal breakthrough energy to make this all work. And I can't say they're not going to do it, but who knows?
The crypto world is stolen from me. It's all run by the CIA. The reason why the CIA runs all crypto is because it's their new black ops money to run all their black ops operations that are running against the people worldwide. So they can bypass Congress and they have a new money system to fund themselves.
Now, here's what's funny. The worse this gets, the more they start fighting with each other, right? So I just saw, I haven't had a chance to look at the filing, but Bayer is now suing some of the pharmaceutical companies saying it invented mRNA technology. I'm like, great, you guys kill each other, So there's a wonderful story in the Bible that I love called the Gideon's Army, story of Gideon. And in it, Gideon has been anointed by an angel of the Lord to throw the Midianites out of Israel. And essentially the way Gideon manages to do it is the Midianites are so hateful and suspicious of each other, they kill each other. And that's my prediction. If the rest of us can do a good job of saying no, slowing it down, bringing friction, and refusing to go along, and bringing transparency to it, then I think the Midianites are going to kill each other. It's, if you look at the fight going on in Washington now between stablecoins, asset tokenization, and CBDC and all the games going on, I mean, the fights are on, and they're mean fights.
There's fact, which will never hurt the correctness and the truth. Because fact and fiction can never meet. Fiction doesn't exist. That's the fable of looping that is no longer in our world. The correctness, the light and love over here of the truth, that will always self-generate. That will never be killed. That will never die. And so, ladies and gentlemen, learn to communicate with correct communication parsing, syntax, grammar. Learn to see your outcome. Learn to visualize. Prepare yourself mentally as this looping gets moved out of your world and we move into a condition of state of the correctness and of the truth to have transparency, travel, and in your mind, and in your life, and in your thoughts, in every ounce of who you are, see the truth and veto the fiction.